Well, here we are with the latest installment of the Seaforth Kilt being sewn for a retired member of the Seaforths and Queensland Highlanders of the British Army. And I'm also going to talk about a few more thoughts and considerations about using the tartan top band, which the client has selected in this case. Now, the tendency is to make these things too wide, so I limit myself to nothing wider than 2.5 inches. In this case, I've gone with 2 3/8 because I didn't want, I wanted to avoid using that white line, because although it's going to be out of sight, I'm always concerned that we're going to have this bit of white peeking out from somewhere. So I just cut it back to 2 3/8 inches, which is to say 6 centimeters. Now I start on the outside apron because we want, as you can see, we want the tartan to line up. We want it to be as unobtrusive as possible. It won't line up with the rest of the kilt. When we look at the inside apron, of course, it's all over the map, but we don't care because the inside apron is concealed when it's worn. So I start sewing at the left-hand edge of the outer apron, and if I pick, in this case, I've chosen to sew it to the black line that's guarding this white line here, which is to say the same element of the tartan that we see here, but up here. If I don't have an element of the tartan to sew to use as a reference, say one of these lines, I'll use one of my gauges and whatever the appropriate width is, and I'll line up the gauge on some element of the tartan. And I'll just make a series of chalk marks to sew to, because it's really, really easy to make a wobbly seam. You don't really notice it at the time, and it's not till you've sewn a foot or so that you back up and you go, oh, that's not right. I have to do that over. So again, 2 3/8, I fold the raw edge. I lay it upside down, fold so the raw edge is even with the raw edge at the top of the kilt. I fold it up. I start sewing to the end. Now, when I get to the end, I've just reached the end of the inside apron. I'm going to do sort of a hospital fold here, a hospital corner, like we used to do in our beds, and then sew back along the top, just sort of a running stitch. Now, there's two ways to do this. Some kilts, I'll sew this down, right? I'll sew this whole thing down, and then I'll put the lining on top. But sometimes I've seen other people do another method, which I sometimes use, which is I'll sew the lining this far and then stop, then put in the lining, I'll do this top band this far and then stop, and then I'll put in the lining and then fold the top band over and sew it down, thus killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And it's easy with this the selvage edge. This is the less perfect of the 2 selvage edges. You could also do it with a raw edge. You would just have to fold it over a second time, which I suppose would create a little bit more bulk, but not too much. So there we go. I'm going to get this top band done. The client has given me free rein in choosing the buckles, so I haven't completely made up my mind yet. But as you can see, I've also done the very heavy bar tacks in silk thread to give additional reinforcement to this seam, because this is a natural point of wear. And as I mentioned a couple of times in videos, people will stick their strap through there and then pull on the whole thing, and eventually the seam blows apart. Yeah, so I'm going to get on it and report back later, I guess, when the lining is in. Cheers.